Sometimes we got to slow down to speed up. Sometimes we were naturally already on course to get exactly to where we needed to, but we get all these perspectives, and Mike talked about in the pumpkin plan, Mike Michalowicz talked about in the pumpkin plan, businesses don't fail because of a lack of ideas. They end up drowning in the ideas. And I think that's what we do. And we think, oh, I got to do this and I got to do that. And you actually never get to where you ultimately wanted to go in the first place. And sometimes when you pause, it gives you a chance to see, where's the river taking me anyhow? Because if I'm paddling and doing all this, I actually don't get to see what's the natural pattern and what work do I really need to do to allow that natural flow to take me in the direction it was taking me anyhow? Or am I headed towards a disaster, which most of the time you'll find out you're actually not. You were actually in pretty good graces, and where things were taking you was right on point with where you wanted to be anyhow.
You work hard in your business. On the Profit by Design podcast, we ask the big question. What has your business done for you lately? Hi, I'm Dr. Sabrina Starling. I'm the business psychologist, the author of the 4-Week Vacation and the How to Hire the Best series, as well as the founder of Tap the Potential, where we coach entrepreneurs like you to design sustainably profitable businesses that give you more time for what matters most and more money in your bank account than ever. Because after all, we believe work supports life, not the other way around. Weekly on the Profit by Design podcast, we bring you tips, tools, and strategies from our own experiences and from the experiences of our guests who are entrepreneurial thought leaders and real life entrepreneurs, all to support you in making intentionally profitable and sustainable business decisions to live the lifestyle you desire. Profit Designers, the 4-Week Vacation, the entrepreneur's ultimate guide to taking your life back from your business is now available. Go to 4weekvacation.com, grab a copy of the book, and be sure to follow the steps there to claim your bonuses. When you purchase the book, you are eligible to join me for my upcoming live training, the 4-Week Vacation Better Business, Better Life Jumpstart. Plus, and you'll also get an invitation to an exclusive VIP closed door training with me to identify the true profit potential within your business. Just follow the steps at 4weekvacation.com. And I hope that the 4-Week Vacation book inspires you for what's possible. It's time to take your life back from your business.
All right, Darren, welcome back for the third time to the Profit by Design podcast. I'm thrilled to have you with us. So for those of you who may be newer to us at Profit by Design, this is Darren Virassammy. Darren is someone that I've connected with probably over the last 4 years, and I've just had a small glimpse into the journey that you're on. But in 4 years' time, one of the things that really stands out to me is your intention around your own entrepreneurial journey and how you are moving more and more into your own zone of genius, living and working from your strengths, your mission, what you're passionate about. And I think that's our greatest opportunity as entrepreneurs, is not to sit still, not to decide that whatever we're doing in the moment is it forever, and that we can make change. And you're a wonderful example of that, Darren.
Thank you so much, Dr. Sabrina. And it's truly a joy to be here. I'm just trying to pick up the feed so I can make sure that we're also sharing it.
Oh, great. I love that.
So yeah, just trying to get that going. So it is an honor to be here. 3 times is a charm. So hopefully we get into some new territory this round, because as you mentioned, I think for us as entrepreneurs, that's such an important lesson. We go through the metamorphosis of transforming into ourselves. And we do that for our businesses, and we go through that process of growing, scaling. And right when we think, oh, we've made it, then we realize we've made it to the next step of transformation that our business needs to go through. And it's not all that much different from life either. I'm honored to be here as always. Any time spent with you and with anybody that you are serving is always well worth it. And I love our conversations.
Yeah, me too. You and I can really connect around tapping into our own potential and the potential of others. And so we'll definitely be hitting on that in this conversation. I want to share your background with our profit designers so they know all about you. So feel free, as I'm doing that, if you need to do anything to get the stream going on your end.
I will.
So this is Darren Virassammy. He's the co-founder of 34 Strong, a public speaker, and someone who is obsessed with seeking personal greatness through connection with nature. He's uniquely positioned to help those in corporate America and individuals reach the potential they desire. He works hard on his own personal development through his hobbies, passions, and personal life. As a husband, father, avid bassist, and black belt, he believes our downtime is just as important as our work time. Boy, Darren, I can't agree more. We are all about work supports life, not the other way around it. Tap the potential. And I have to share, as I wrote the 4-week vacation, one of the things that I dove deep into in that book is all the reasons why downtime makes us more effective as human beings. And so I want to open our conversation there with share the journey that you've been on, and you've really changed your life up to improve your downtime. To me, that's what it looks like. So share a little bit about that.
Yeah, it's interesting. I feel like our downtime sometimes might actually be our uptime, in that when we think we're up working on our business and different things like that, it brings us energy, but gradually that's actually bringing us quote unquote down. And when we pause, that's actually the refill that puts energy back into the container that is our body, that is our mind, that's our spirit, if you're into spirituality, whatever that might be. So it's those things that we actually do in those areas that we naturally call our downtime that actually prepare us to operate at these much, much higher levels that we seek to perform at. So some of the things that I've personally have gone through in my own metamorphosis. Where am I talking to you from right now, Dr. Sabrina?
It's not the United States.
I'm not in the US right now. I'm actually in the Caribbean. I am in Barbados right now with my family. Our family actually decided before COVID, actually in 2019, my wife and I made a decision that we wanted to give our family and our young children, now my son is 5 and my daughter is 9, we wanted to give them the chance to live overseas for a period of time. So I am joining you today from the beautiful island of Barbados down in the southeastern Caribbean. And why did we do that? Well, part of it is my family is originally from the British West Indies, from the country of Guyana on the tip of South America. And what we noticed was anytime we traveled to the Caribbean, Dr. Sabrina, the kids were just really different in the best of ways, just very present, very, very detached from any desire to be around devices. And then you start realizing that just wasn't a big part of life and culture down here. And there's many great things that we loved when we made that decision to come down here in the US, many things that we love about living in the United States and kind of going through that process. But we wanted to at least give them a season, and we committed that, hey, we're going to do at least a year abroad, and we're definitely going to fulfill that commitment. Actually, we're going to be here for more than a year. We arrived here on December 31st, 2020. So, and I was actually just back in the US giving a TED Talk. So we came down to have this experience, not only for our families personally, but it even in the virtual environment that we're in and in the work that I've been doing with 34 Strong, it forces your hand on certain things, right? Because you can only operate from a certain capacity and going through, but you still have to bring the value that you're going to bring as a business owner and leader at a really high level, but you can't just fall into the trap in certain areas of swooping in, which we all naturally do. And in the journey that I've been on in growing and scaling 34 Strong, as we've done, not me personally, but our incredible executive leadership team that we have built methodically to get to that point, it's been critical, not about what we do in the business. It's actually been far more critical about what we don't do in the business. So coming to Barbados, living here and going through has really helped to keep me razor focused on I think you frame it this way. What if you're billing, I can't remember if it's like $10,000 an hour, and it's not
$10,000 an hour activities.
$10,000 an hour activities, right? And that's not always trading time for money. It's actually the $10,000 an hour activities of spending the time coaching and developing your team, going through, spending the time, that downtime, taking a walk like I did before today's interview, out in nature, going for a swim, to invest in my mind so I can show up far more sharp when I'm serving others or when I'm serving my team, because those $10,000 an hour activities are measured in the return on investment in developing our people and the ripple that it's going to have. So those have been some of the pieces that have really come forward for the life transition that we've wanted to make. And interestingly enough, it's actually helped in serving the business better, because again, it forces the hand where you can't just swoop in on certain things, and it's made us better as a team.
Well, and one of the things I'm aware of, when you and I first connected, you weren't doing many virtual trainings. Every training that you did was live, right?
Right. Yeah.
So let's talk about just that transition over the last few years.
Yeah. Well, one of the things we realized when we were looking at the end of 2019, we were kind of going through a little bit of a pumpkin plan analysis, rating our clients and different things. And one of the things that really showed up was about that much of our business was virtual, but the quality of that revenue was 10x better than the stuff that we were doing in person. And it wasn't, and when I say the quality of revenue, I want to be very clear, I'm not speaking just in terms of dollars and profitability, which it did hit those marks. I mean, in terms of the quality of revenue, in terms of the impact we could have to others, which is at the core of our mission. So for 34 Strong, being able to help create great places to work, it wasn't about just strictly only maximum profitability, which is very important. We want to do that, but that's the outcome of making the impact that we're going to do. And you can do those things. You don't have to sacrifice one for the other. I want to be very clear with entrepreneurs. It's easy to be like, well, I'm just all about the impact. I don't care about making money. If you don't make money and you can't eat, you can't do your business for a long time. So you need to be profitable so that you can have more impact, because you can then turn and reinvest that. That's what came away. So for us, that awakening came in 2019. 2020, obviously, we've all been through the storm that is what it is for the past, nearly 2 years now. And it forced 34 Strong. Not for us, it was already the direction we were moving to try and offer more in the virtual place. It forced our clients to realize that was the direction that was best for them. And that has completely shifted the balance. So what transpired with COVID, 34 Strong was already directionally trying to move in that direction. It was getting our clients to a place of where that was comfortable for them and they could go through. The hand was kind of forced. And it allowed us to be a little bit more innovative in how we were putting on our workshops, different things that we were doing. Many of you that have seen me and heard me speak before, I've talked a lot about strengths and that whole approach to human development. Dr. Sabrina, you and your team are a huge proponent of that. What 2020 did on the business frontier is it opened the Pandora's box of all the other needs organizationally, especially in some of the larger scale clients that we serve, of the mental health components, the wellness, the well-being type work that is absolutely needed to just take care of people. What's it like parenting in chaotic time, and how challenging that has been. So it opened up the deck for us to serve much, much more broadly in taking care of organizations on a leadership level and on a staff level, and just trying to keep, the analogy I like to use is the snow plows, like going through and making sure that the roads are cleared. That's kind of what we've been doing to help people to stay engaged so they can show up to work, because they have solutions for these things that are wearing on their mind, Dr. Sabrina. Like, how do I parent in chaotic times? How do I cope? What are coping mechanisms? How do I take care of my own wellness and well-being? We had to design under heavy pressure last year all sorts of stuff and offerings that we hadn't done before, but we were set up to do. And guess how it came together? Not by us individually, it's by our partners that we'd built over the years, all the relationships that we'd built over the years with different organizations that were really well positioned to be specialized in certain areas where we weren't. And we were able to offer that. So in terms of me, I'm bringing this full circle in terms of the time that I personally spend doing virtual trainings and different elements. That went from up here, way up here at the beginning of last year, to I spend far less time. I probably spend less than 20% of my time right now actually in the billable chair doing stuff. But I'm having far more personally of those $10,000 an hour conversations internally with my team, with clients for future vision of what could be, and stretching the thinking and getting to have a seat at the table with our executive leadership team of really designing the impact that we seek to have in the future. That's been the gift of going virtual and some of the pressures that we faced last year, which for many of us were completely challenging and pretty awful at times, but we were able to rise through it.
Darren, there's so much to be unpacked in what you've just shared here. And one of the things that stands out to me is I imagine as you and your wife made the decision that you were going to take at least a year abroad and give your children and your family that experience, you had no idea that COVID was coming. And as your team made the decision to move towards more virtual to have a greater impact, you had no idea COVID was coming. And so you saw it created this tremendous opportunity for you to really pivot and to leverage and capitalize on that. And I think there's so many things that we have yet to realize from COVID that as years pass, we will see some really great benefits that have come from COVID that we didn't recognize in the past. I think one that really is most prominent is people have come to appreciate more time with family. And as hard as it is to be cooped up with your family for long periods of time, there is also an appreciation of there's good quality time that has come from that. There's also that appreciation of it's possible to be flexible in how we work. This idea that we need to be in an office from 8 to 5 or 9 to 5 is an outdated notion, and it doesn't make us our most productive. And there's a real shift, not just in the United States, but all over the world, that work should support life, not the other way around, that we really need to rethink how we're doing things. And I love what you said about the strength of the relationships that have been built, the partnerships and the collaborations, were what 34 Strong was able to rely on and utilize to shift and pivot to meet the needs of your clients. You were very tuned in to what your clients needed, what their teams needed, and how, you knew how to bring in this company or that company to help support in what you were delivering. And that, when we're so tuned in to what our clients need, and even able to anticipate, sometimes when they're not even able to articulate what it is they need, they just know something doesn't feel good. You and your team were able to see exactly what they needed and bring it in to them. And in doing that, I really want to emphasize that if you had been sitting in an office for 50 or 60 hours a week, the creative genius that you and your team needed to pull these different pieces together would not have been there. It was because you all were taking care of yourselves and you were doing things outside of work that would spark and feed the creativity that was needed.
Yeah, absolutely. I definitely agree with that. And I believe right now, what has been revealed for us with 34 Strong, with the growth that we've had over the past several years, and 2020 into this year, the growth that we're undergoing right now is very, very significant. One of the things that has become very clear is there's a tsunami in a lot of organizations and just across the economy, of people retiring or quitting in droves. And a big part of that is because many organizations, large and small, over the course of the past year and a half, in the struggle to survive, maybe didn't treat their people quite the way they should have. So as that tsunami is hitting, there's a great opportunity that I think is very important for a lot of us in small businesses to be mindful of. And that's make sure you're taking care of your people, creating great places to work. And if you've done that over the past year and a half or so, And if you're committed to doing that, that's what people are looking for right now. That is what people are looking for, because to your point, work supports life, not the other way around. And the organizations that are realizing that, they're actually rising to the top. And as people are quitting company X or government organization Y, they're going back into the market. There's going to be a huge amount of top talent that's actually available right now. If you've positioned yourself properly or you're actively working on that right now, those are the people that are going to show up at your door. So when we think about this in the future, there's companies that are really going to be made in this season that will be here for generations to come. And there's going to be others that are going to die off, not because they didn't have the right processes and systems in place, but because they didn't take care of their lifeblood when it mattered the most, the health and wellness. And when I say the lifeblood, I mean the people. And when we're in that season, and when you're committed to that right now, that cultural piece, huge opportunities right here. And that plays in exactly what you were talking about. For yourself, first and foremost, taking that time, just go step outside for a minute, breathe some fresh air, go see the world outside of your computer screen, outside of your Zoom screen. We intentionally, you and I have had conversations like this. We're like, I'd love to see you. And we're not going to look at each other because we're sick of being on Zoom.
Yeah.
So we'll just have a conversation. And you'll be like, I'm going for a walk. I'm like, great, go for a walk. I'm going to go for a walk as well. Or I'm going to go sit outside and just stare at the trees and just be. But we're having that walking talk, and you're mirroring it as close to possible as you could, those walking conversations that you might have had, getting outside of the four walls of an office or whatever it might be. And it charges us. It changes the way our brains wire. And the final thing I'll say on that point is Cornell University last year, I talked about this in my TED Talk. There was a study at the beginning of last year that was released, and they found that doses of as little as less than 10 minutes being in nature, so being outside in some capacity. It didn't have to be that you went and camped in a forest or disappeared from humanity for 25 years and didn't speak to people and grew a long yogi beard like I had last year, right? Everybody's like, whoa, what happened, right? So it didn't mean that you had to do those things. 10 minutes just being outside. It improved problem-solving skills, reduced stress, and improved people's overall happiness in as little as 10 minutes away. Again, Cornell did a study on this. I gave a TED Talk on this. And you know what? It's nothing that we haven't known for decades and millennia and thousands of years as humans. That's where we came from, was outside. We used to have air conditioning and all of these magical things that we have today. Has the quality of life gotten better because we have those things? Yeah, but our brains neurologically need to experience nature, need to experience some of, even if we're just standing outside and breathing fresh air, looking at the sky for 10 minutes, taking a walk, it does something to us that is so critical for taking us from the downtime to actually preparing us for the uptime or refilling our bucket.
Absolutely. I can't agree more. And, our team does walking one-to-ones.
Yeah.
And I love it because I definitely can listen more when I'm not staring at a Zoom screen, and I can hear subtleties in the conversation, and we have better ideas when we are moving. When we do our retreats, and this is how we discovered the power of going for a walk. When we do our retreats, we started doing walking cue storming sessions. And so we would send our retreat participants out with a powerful question. And on the way out, one person is answering the question. And on the way back, the other person is answering the question. And being in nature does something to free us up. And I think we just have so many notions about what work looks like and how we're supposed to work. And I think it's time to really start looking outside the box and recognize that our team members are productive when we're encouraging them to be physically active, to be outside in nature, to enjoy time with family. One of the things we talk about at Tap the Potential is veggies first. And that means profit first is all about you take the profit first to make sure your business is healthy. Well, veggies first is all about the personal side of things and making sure that we are taking care of ourselves first before we show up and try to serve others. And that's just part of being our best and being our most productive selves.
I would agree with that very, very much so. And with the veggies first, I might need to have you talk to my children. Well, so that's a side conversation that we can have. Sometimes we need to work on that.
Yeah, I don't know that I can get them to eat their spinach, Darren.
Yeah. Sometimes we sneak in the shakes, but that's a whole nother conversation, right? And going through that, I think Aristotle said this. I talked about this in the TED Talk, and it was just, in nature, there is just something of the marvelous that's there. And it brings us back to that place. And you don't have to look far, right? If we think of our businesses and we go through the process of thinking about our businesses, where does it start? Well, it starts as a seed, an idea, something that's in here that we feel and that we decide to bring forth into the world. And then it grows and it turns into whatever it turns into. Now, if you go look outside a tree or a tomato seed, right? Like, how does that tomato seed know to become a tomato? Is it the dust? Because if you crunch it up, it just looks like a bunch of dust, right? But yet in there's this tomato that then is the birthplace of thousands of other tomato plants, if we want it to be. But how does that come together? Well, we see the growth cycle just naturally taking place. And sometimes, you and I have talked about this so many times, is sometimes we got to slow down to speed up.
Yeah.
Sometimes we were naturally already on course to get exactly to where we needed to, but we get all these perspectives. And I think Mike talked about in the pumpkin plan, Mike Michalowicz talked about in the pumpkin plan, businesses don't fail because of a lack of ideas. They end up drowning in the ideas. And I think that's what we do. And we think, oh, I got to do this and I got to do that. And you actually never get to where you ultimately wanted to go in the first place. And sometimes when you pause, it gives you a chance to see, where's the river taking me anyhow? Because if I'm paddling and doing all this, I actually don't get to see what's the natural pattern and what work do I really need to do to allow that natural flow to take me in the direction it was taking me anyhow? Or am I headed towards a disaster, which most of the time you'll find out you're actually not. You were actually in pretty good graces, and where things were taking you was right on point with where you wanted to be anyhow.
Absolutely. I'm so glad you're bringing the pumpkin plan into this, because one of the things, as you said, that is, there's never a shortage of ideas. And I know for myself, before I learned about the pumpkin plan and read the book, I had lots and lots of ideas, and I was thinking my way out of business, quite honestly, because I wasn't listening to what my best clients were telling me that they appreciate most. And so I was going against nature. I was going against the pattern because I was all in my head. And with the pumpkin plan, I learned, and one of the things I appreciate so much about the pumpkin plan is we don't have to think. We can have conversations with our top clients and listen to what their needs and challenges are and look at how we can solve their problems, their challenges, to help them get to what they most want. Our best clients will tell us what they appreciate most about what we're delivering. They'll tell us what they want more of. I had a conversation yesterday with 3 of our great clients at Tap the Potential, and I said, just tell me what you need. And I'm going to tell you, what they told me was not anything I would have ever thought they would have said. And it's such a simple thing. It was such a simple request. I was like, oh, I think we can totally do this for you. Like next week or 2 weeks from now, we can make it happen. And, if I was just thinking and I wasn't listening, and I would have been going against the grain. And so again, our $10,000 an hour activities, our highest value contributions, come when we stop working so hard and we slow down, pause, then we have space to listen and to ask the questions and to hear.
Very, very true. It's interesting, the $10,000 an hour work that we're doing. I've actually been having some of those developmental conversations inside of 34 Strong with some of our team, our executive leadership team, myself included, because I'm no different than you or any other entrepreneur. You see something that you can go solve, and you're like, I can jump in, right? Again, you can swoop in and decide I can tackle that. And when we start actually looking at our time as finite and asking ourselves, is this a $10,000 an hour expenditure of my time? Or is this a $10 an hour expenditure of my time? Did I fix something? Absolutely. But where do those $10 an hour or $20 or even $50 an hour pieces, where do they actually lead versus where you're at and with what needs to take place? And is there a way that your brain can be better utilized? And when we actually pause, we can look at the ROTI, which stands for return on time invested. It's also a really good food for those of you that like Indian food, but ROTI stands for return on time invested. In business, we constantly hear about return on investment, and yet we actually factor in nothing for our own time that we put in. And the reality, I mean, with your background, Dr. Sabrina, you can speak better this than I can. Decision-making fatigue is real. Steve Jobs notoriously wore literally a uniform. He had his black turtleneck, and go through the billionaires club and you're like, these people have billions of dollars. Why do they wear the same thing? Are they that cheap? And all these narratives come up, and it has nothing to do with that. It has everything to do with they're that aware of depleting their decision-making capacity because they think in terms of the $10,000 an hour conversations that they're going to have or $1 million conversations that they're going to have cumulatively over time. Today's conversation might not be that, but going back to the tomato plant, it might be the seed that's going to break ground a week from now or 2 weeks from now. And where's that going to lead? Next week, next month, next year. So when we start seeing ourselves through those lenses and come to the awareness of the reality of decision-making fatigue, that cognitively, there's only so much that we can do, we can start actually completely revaluing the return on our time invested, which is hugely important.
Yeah, that's so true. So taking the time to figure out what we're going to wear in the morning is a decision. And we have multiple decisions that we as entrepreneurs are faced with every single day. And if we become fatigued, the quality of that decision-making goes further and further down. And I love thinking about the dumb tax and, thinking about the decisions that have been made that had impact negatively in my life. And when I think about the dumb tax, because it reminds me every time I'm tempted to make an impulsive decision, I stop. I rely a lot on my leadership team and run things by them, because then we have multiple perspectives on the decision making too. And so I want them protecting their decision making ability too. I don't want them fatigued with multiple decisions. And I think we easily are making 30 or 40,000 micro decisions every single day. And so any that we can take off of our plate and just streamline things and do things repetitively. That's why systems work so well. People often resist systems. They're like, oh, I want to just be free and I want to do it creatively every single time. Well, every single time you're doing that, you're making decisions and you're wearing down your brain power. So the more we can automate and put just on automatic in our world, the better we're protecting that decision-making ability. I want to talk a little bit about your podcast, Darren, The Nature Advantage. You've been doing this now. I don't know how many interviews you've done at this point. Where are you with it?
I should probably know the answer to that question. I'll know the answer to that question after this call because I actually have my Nature Advantage meeting. I think I have interviewed coming up on about 30 plus in terms of the shows. We usually, because they're just such incredible content, we usually split them into 2-part interviews. So it's 2 shows each interview because they're at least an hour long. The interviews, sometimes they go a little bit longer. But yeah, I think we're up to about 30 people interviewed so far. And I think we're getting close to our 40-something episode that we're going to get going on. And again, as you know, this kind of started accidentally. But yeah, I'll let you get into talking a little bit about that and asking questions.
So I just imagine the podcast is thenatureadvantageshow.com, right? That's the URL. So having had this many conversations about the Nature Advantage, I imagine you have learned a lot. And so I'm curious, how has your thinking around the Nature Advantage, how has that shifted since you started the podcast?
So it's shifted in a couple of ways. So it's because of the podcast and because of the TEDx talk, because the TEDx talk took me into places of myself to really get out clearly what it is that I thought to what it is that I learned, and the evidence was showing me from the conversations I had. And that's ultimately how the Nature Advantage show started. I was actually interviewing a few people to prepare for a TEDx talk. And the TEDx talk that I just delivered that'll be live before the end of the year, it really tied up under this simple concept, Dr. Sabrina, and it was distinctive by nature, how time and nature makes us better, more present, and distinctive in our life and our work. That's what it is. What I'm getting at here, to break it down, and where the concept of the nature advantage. So when I talk about it as an advantage, we hear of nature and, oh, time in nature is therapy and it heals us. And it's very beneficial from a healing standpoint. I agree with all that. It definitely does that. The question that I haven't heard anybody asking is, okay, great, it heals us. We're so fixated on the brokenness of having to repair what's broken. I asked, how does it advance us? Let's acknowledge it deals with the areas where we're feeling like there's breaks, but I haven't heard anybody talking about, what about the world's best practitioners in whatever their trade is? If they're like the world's best practitioner at like knitting, I'd actually like to interview them, right? And if that's their thing, that's cool, right? But I started having these conversations with just different people who, when you realize you talk to them, they are on top of their game in whatever it is they're doing. You were on the show, mind-blowing conversation. We got into Q storming and the power of how that's helped advance not only you, but how you've actually used that in retreats and in business settings to really push entrepreneurs into that level of growth to get to those peak states. So you and I have spoken. We interviewed Mike Kalowitz. You know, everybody's that's tuning in here is very familiar with him, but Wall Street Journal bestselling author. We've talked to other TEDx speakers. We've talked to Tony Robbins' business partner for over 30 years, Joseph McClendon, one of the best in the business as a neuroscientist, period. Just Dr. McClendon, absolutely phenomenal interview. We've talked to 5-time Grammy Award-winning artists. And you know what emerged in that process was nature was critical for them, for their growth. They actually intentionally spent time not practicing their quote unquote craft and their trade of writing more, playing more bass for Victor Wooten, 5-time Grammy Award-winning bassist from Bela Fleck and the Flecktones. They spent time away in nature and they had different practices. And it was that time away that was a critical part of their habits and their practice that helped advance them in these other areas. And we talk about so much of the narrative, especially over the past coming up 2 years here since COVID, has been about nature being a healer. I'm not going to dispute that. I fully agree with that. It heals us in incredible ways. We have to talk about how it charges us. And you don't need to sit here and listen to me running my mouth. Again, look out your window at that tree that started from like a cone like this, right? This is a giant sequoia cone. Okay, you could see how small this is. An actual seed from a giant sequoia is about the size of a grain of oat. And the giant sequoia is one of the largest and oldest living organisms on the planet. They can grow up to 3,000 years old, hundreds and hundreds of feet high. And it starts from that little area and it takes root and it grows and it pushes past. So nature helps advance that. Why have we gotten so smart that we've moved away from that? When you look through the connections with human history, Da Vinci, Einstein, right? Maya Angelou, you look through the list. Nelson Mandela even talked about the protecting nature and the importance of it for fueling us, not as a source of only healing us. And that's the part of the narrative that I believe is getting lost. So what have I learned? I've learned that many of the greatest minds that I've had the privilege of speaking with completely have figured that out and have made that a habit. If you actually pay attention to a lot of Mike's books and you really dig in, one of the common themes, his big epiphanies and ahas, even if he doesn't get to share them in his books, like Clockwork, he talks about the queen bee role. That came because he got stung by a bee. You'll hear more about that story in the TED Talk coming up. I'm not going to give it away, but a lot of what he does in his books and his writing are all rooted in biomimicry. And that's why you see quotes, for those of you that follow him, that end up showing up as these nature quotes. That's been what's fueled his brilliance, and I know it's been huge for you as well.
Well, and I'm just really struck. I'm sitting here just sorting through in my head what you said about how we think of nature as healing. And so like there's something in us that's broken, and so we need to go out in nature and heal and repair it. And if we only focus on that angle, we're really missing the potential. And so for me, in my own trajectory, I'm connecting with this because I left doing mental health work because it was all about fixing what was broken and restoring people back to health. And I'm like, no, there's so much psychology has to offer to help us really tap into our human potential. Part was being missed. And you're coming at nature from, I hear that same perspective that let's look at what nature has to offer us beyond healing and helping us to really realize our full potential. And you're bringing forth conversations with thought leaders and innovators who that's just a part of their process, but it's not really been highlighted and talked about to this point. So it's the advantage, the nature advantage.
That's exactly it. And Jim Rohn, he says we're the average of the 5 people that we spend the most time with. Very, very common statement. Many of us have heard that. I fully agree with that. The question I ask, and I encourage all of us to ask, what if we're also the average of the 5 places where we spend the most time? That's going to be one of the key questions that I got to in the TED Talk, but I'm going to drop it here. I haven't said that very much publicly and stuff that I've had subsequently since the TED Talk, but we're talking about it. And I really want to encourage people to think about that. That'll shift your perspective on a lot of things, because think of when you've had those breakthroughs and those epiphanies. Was it while you were crunching a spreadsheet on Excel? No. Not usually. You might have a breakthrough on the number, but not that $10,000 an hour activity. That doesn't tend to come when you're sitting behind the box, working on your keyboard with your mouse in hand. More times than not, those big epiphanies, those life-changing moments, those life-changing ideas come when we're completely free and getting our mind uncluttered and allowing in what's already naturally there. We've created those blocks around that, and it allows that back in. So what if you're the average of the 5 places that you spend the most time? Where are you spending your time? That's what I encourage our listeners to really think of.
Darren, I want to offer you a chance to share the link to your podcast, The Nature Advantage Show, and also talk some briefly about 34 Strong, because that's work we've talked about previously on the podcast, but it's so significant in the work that we've done with our clients at Tap the Potential. I see people benefiting in so many ways. So I want you to also mention that.
I'll say a couple of things. So natureadvantageshow.com, that's where you can learn more about the podcast. Some of the phenomenal guests, like your host today, Dr. Sabrina Starling, has been on there. We've interviewed the oldest person to have climbed Mount Kilimanjaro, just a host of different people. I've had the privilege of interviewing iconist author Jamie Mustard, and we can just keep going down the list. So lots of fascinating conversations and learning what they're doing in business and in the world, and things that you can walk through and try their techniques. Because some of them you might have your walk routine like Dr. Sabrina does, but you might find some little element that they're doing that might open your eyes up to a different perspective. If you're interested in actually following the journey of what it's like as well for a family to completely uproot from the US and move overseas for a period of time, what that journey has been like, to flip our script as a family, we have a little YouTube channel, the Flip the Script Family. So you can find us on YouTube, the Flip the Script Family, flipthescriptfamily.com. And it talks about our journey of what that's like. We release different videos categorizing what it's like and what it's been like to make that move, what life on the island has been like for an American family, making that transition, and what it's been like living through a volcanic eruption and a hurricane, 2 of which the volcano hadn't erupted in 42 years. It erupted in April. 2 months later, hurricane hadn't hit the island in 66 years. It hit. We got to live through both of those things. So been quite an adventure for the past several months here. So we've got footage and different things like that of what that experience was like for us and kind of going through those. So those are there. Now transitioning to 34 Strong. 34 Strong is, we focus on creating great places to work. Our primary industry that we've been focusing on over the past few years has been in the government agencies. We've done a lot of support in those industries. We haven't lost sight and lost connection with the small businesses that we've had the privilege of serving as well, but we've been doing it a lot more. There's been a lot more needs, especially over the past year and a half, with really serving and solving the employee disengagement piece for government organizations. We've played a lot in the private sector and whatnot as well, and we continue to do that. And I am happy to report this is one of those pieces that I think it's important for all of us as entrepreneurs to be mindful of, which is simply this: you got to eat your own cooking. And there were times for us at 34 Strong, we weren't eating our own cooking, where I say that in the fact that we were focusing on creating great places to work, but we weren't even taking our managers through our Best Manager Academy. How absurd is that? Like, that's absolutely ridiculous. Next week, we're actually going to be taking our managers, myself included. We've gotten a new version of it that we've put together, and we're all going through it collectively as a team. 34 Strong, we're trying to not only change the experience for employees creating great workplaces out there, we're trying to eat our own cooking. And it's important for us as entrepreneurs, depending on the service business that we're in, to actually do that. Because sometimes we can actually be big advocates for others, but not take what we're doing for others and apply it in-house to our own ship. And that can maybe not be the best investment of our time. So coming back to those $10,000 an hour conversations, sometimes it's not the external ones you're having. Sometimes it's the ones you're having in-house. And as we've grown our senior leadership team, that is a big part of where my dear friend and business partner, Brandon Miller, and I are actually spending our time. We're like, we can get paid lots of money to go out and do that for others. Why would we not invest that time in our people who are going to be the ones that are going out there and transforming it? So that's what we got there. And I am happy to say that this year we were an Inc. magazine recognized best workplace in America. So I don't take that lightly that we got to that point in the heat of really one of the roughest seasons that we've been through over the course of the past, year and a half plus with COVID. So it's just a little bit about 34 Strong.
Big congratulations to you and the Eat Your Own Cooking. We at Tap the Potential have the same struggles because we're givers and we're out there trying to take care of everyone else. And we have been looking internally in terms of integrity. Are we walking our talk? Are we doing for our team what we're out there advocating for others to do for their teams? And it's a constant need to realign. And the work that 34 Strong is doing out there in the world is so powerful and so needed, especially in these government organizations. And I'm so happy that we at Tap the Potential have been able to work with 34 Strong and bring what you're sharing in the corporate world into these small businesses. And all of you who are listening to this, as you're working on your business and you're being intent on creating a great place to work, know that the impact that you're having goes far beyond the individuals who work in your company, because they're taking that experience home into their families. They take what they learn that in the development that you offer them in your workplace, they take that home and they share it with their families, and the impact spreads far beyond. So in terms of, looking at how do you take what happens at work and make an impact, that is a huge opportunity. So Darren, I appreciate the insights that you've brought here today. I want to invite those of you, if you're not yet a member of our Entrepreneurs Take Your Life Back community, come join us over there on Facebook, Entrepreneurs Take Your Life Back. You can get there by going to tapthepotential.com/group. And we want to support you in having a great life and being out there and making an impact. Thank you so much, Darren.
Thanks, Dr. Sabrina. It's always a joy to spend time with you. And, I'm an entrepreneur at heart. So that's why anytime I get an invite to serve fellow entrepreneurs wherever they're at in the life cycle of their business, what a joy. It really lights my fire because I'm very passionate about helping entrepreneurs as well along the journey.
That's so clear in how you show up, Darren. Thank you.
Thank you for spending time with us today. Join our conversation in the Entrepreneurs Take Your Life Back Facebook community at tapthepotential.com/group. Share your aha moments from today's episode, ask me questions, and join in on the fun with your fellow entrepreneurs on the journey to designing sustainably profitable businesses that give you more time for what matters most and more money in your bank account than ever. And finally, share today's episode with a friend if you know a friend who would enjoy it. This is real life business. Keep your chin up, keep moving forward. You got this. If you're loving the Profit by Design podcast and have gotten any value out of it for your business or your life, would you mind doing two things? Subscribe to the show so you never miss an episode, and please leave us a review. Our listener reviews help us get into the top 10 of all entrepreneurship podcasts so that more entrepreneurs like you discover us. Your review is critical in helping us make a difference for more entrepreneurs who are ready to take their life back.